In a world divided by wealth and color, one woman's quiet kindness changed everything. She was just a maid, invisible to most, forgotten by many. But when a dying millionaire made his final request, Grace stepped forward. And what she did in those last days would challenge everything we know about loyalty, forgiveness, and the human heart. This is not about money. This is about grace, in every sense of the word. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and hit the bell, so you never miss a story that touches the soul. New Orleans, far from the glittering lights of the city, lived a woman named Grace Williams. She had worked as a maid for more than 20 years, cleaning houses that smelled of perfume and power, homes where her presence was necessary but never truly seen. Grace moved through life silently, her kindness often unnoticed, her strength hidden behind a gentle smile. One morning, she received an unexpected call from a private hospital. An old man named Mr. Whitmore, one of the richest businessmen in Louisiana, had personally requested her. She barely remembered him, a man known for his fortune, his arrogance, and the mansion she used to clean many years ago. But now he was dying, and he wanted to see her. When Grace entered his private room, the once powerful man looked nothing like the figure she used to serve. His body was frail, his hands trembling, his eyes dimmed with age and regret. The doctor said he had only weeks left, but he was not asking for more time. He was asking for peace. Grace began visiting him daily, at first as a nurse's helper, then as a quiet companion. She noticed how the nurses avoided conversation with him, perhaps intimidated, perhaps indifferent. But Grace saw something else. A man terrified not of death, but of dying without forgiveness. As the days passed, she learned fragments of his past from the letters and photographs scattered across his table. He had lost his wife young, distanced himself from his family, and built a fortune that filled every corner of his house, except his heart. Now, surrounded by machines and silence, he was haunted by the things he could not change. Grace took care of him with patience and dignity. She read to him, adjusted his blanket, and sometimes just sat quietly beside him, letting him rest in peace. She never asked questions, never judged. Her presence alone seemed to calm him. It was as if, in those final days, she became the only person who truly saw him as human, not as a name, not as a bank account, but as a soul nearing the end. One evening, she found an envelope on his bedside table, sealed but addressed to her. The handwriting was shaky. Inside was a simple note. "Grace, I have one last wish. Please take me home." The message was brief, but its meaning was clear. He wanted to return to the small town where he was born, a place he hadn't visited in more than 60 years. The doctors warned it was dangerous, but Grace knew it was the only way for him to leave this world in peace. The next morning, she packed a small bag, signed the discharge papers, and drove him across the long southern roads. The journey took hours. Fields stretched endlessly on both sides, and the sun dipped slowly into the horizon. Grace drove in silence, feeling the gravity of every mile, as if each turn of the wheel was erasing years of regret. When they finally reached the old town, it looked frozen in time. The wooden houses leaned with age, the church bell was rusted, and the streets were empty. Grace parked the car near a small hill where wildflowers grew. There, under the shade of an old willow tree, lay a forgotten grave, the grave of his first love. She laid flowers on the stone and stood beside him as he closed his eyes. There were no words, no tears, only the soft sound of wind through the trees. In that moment, the world stood still, and for the first time in decades, peace returned to the old man's heart. He passed away quietly that night. Grace sat beside him until morning, holding his hand, whispering a prayer she had learned as a child. The sunrise bathed the room in gold, as if the sky itself was saying goodbye. Weeks later, Grace received a letter from a law firm. Inside was a note, his will. He had left her something unexpected. Not his mansion, not his fortune, but the very house where she had once worked as a maid. It was hers now, written in his own hand. And along with it, a message. You gave me dignity when I had none. Let this home give you the same. Grace stood in front of that house days later, the wind brushing her hair as she turned the old key. The place smelled the same, of wood, rain, and old memories. But now it felt different. For the first time, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel invisible. The house was quiet, but filled with something new, a sense of belonging. From that day on, Grace continued her work, not as a maid, but as a caregiver for the elderly. She said it was the only way she could honor him, by giving others the peace he found at the end. She never spoke publicly of what happened, never sought attention or praise. But in the quiet moments of every sunset, when the light spilled across her small porch, she smiled. Because she knew that sometimes the greatest acts of love come from those who expect nothing in return. Moral: this story is not about money or race or even forgiveness. It is about two souls, one searching for redemption, the other giving it freely. I wear.